From the outside, Maple Ridge looked like the kind of neighborhood a successful black woman was supposed to aspire to. Clean sidewalks, bright lawns, perfect lines of identical houses that made realtors talk in circles about quiet communities and great schools. Dr. Nia Carter didn't buy into the fantasy. She bought into the peace. After 2 decades of residency programs, clinic shifts, and proving her worth 10 times more than her white colleagues ever had to, she was ready for stillness. What she didn't expect was how quickly the stillness would turn into surveillance. The day she moved in, she caught the first sign. Not the "welcome to the neighborhood" smiles realtors promised. Not the friendly wave from across the lawn. It was the stare. A long, unblinking stare from an elderly white man watering his yard. He didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't even pretend he hadn't been watching her unload her furniture. He just tracked every movement, like he was mentally documenting a disturbance. That was the moment Nia realized something. This wasn't a neighborhood that resisted outsiders. It resisted her kind of outsider. But she brushed it off. You learn to do that, being a black woman in America, especially one who earns more than people expect you to. Still, the air felt heavy that day. 2 days later, before she'd even finished unpacking, a white woman in a fleece vest approached her driveway. "Hi, I'm Diana," she said, smiling a little too wide. Then the question came, the one every black professional hears at least once in their life. "Are you the new housekeeper?" Not homeowner, not neighbor, not even renter. The housekeeper. It wasn't what she said, it was the normalcy with which she said it. Like it wasn't offensive. Like it wasn't rooted in the assumption that a black woman couldn't possibly afford a 5-bedroom place in Maple Ridge unless she was cleaning it. Nia smiled back, the polite, tight smile black women give when they're deciding whether to correct ignorance or conserve energy. "I'm the owner," she replied. Diana blinked. Once, twice. "Oh," she finally let out. "Well, welcome." But even as she walked away, her eyes lingered, studying, measuring. That's when the unease stopped being in her head and became on her face. The next sign came a week later. Maple Ridge held a homeowners meeting every first Saturday, something Nia only knew because she saw everyone walking to the cul-de-sac park with dishes, clipboards, and those folding chairs that scream suburban politics. She stepped outside to ask where it was being held, only for a man to cut her off with a dismissive, "Oh, I thought you knew." The flyer went out last week, a flyer she never received, a meeting she wasn't invited to, a conversation that didn't include her. That wasn't an accident. That was a message. And the message was simple. You're here, but you're not one of us. But the biggest shift, the one that changed everything, came from a place she least expected, her pool. She bought the house specifically for it. A wide, deep blue rectangle tucked behind tall hedges, a place to float after long days at the clinic, a place her daughter could visit in the summer, a place that felt like hers alone. But tranquility doesn't last long when entitlement lives next door. On a quiet Saturday morning, she walked outside and saw it. Footprints, wet footprints on the concrete, not hers, not her daughter's, not from maintenance. Someone had been there. Recently, comfortably. The gate lock showed no damage. The chairs had been moved. A towel she didn't own sat balled up in the corner. Nia froze. This wasn't kids running across her lawn. This wasn't a delivery guy turning around in her driveway. This was someone stepping into her sanctuary like they had a right to it. That's when she noticed something else, a shadow moving behind the neighbor's upstairs window. Then it disappeared. Someone wasn't just trespassing. Someone was watching. Before the story goes any deeper, because trust me, it gets worse. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button so you never miss these real, raw, uncomfortable stories the world loves to gloss over. Now back to Nia, because this next part is where the neighborhood stops pretending. After the footprints incident, the atmosphere shifted from silent judgment to something heavier, quiet policing. Neighbors walked more slowly when they passed her yard. Teenagers paused their conversations when she stepped outside. A couple whispered to each other when she took her trash out, like she was a threat they were tiptoeing around. It was subtle, calculated, and familiar. Black people know this stage well, the moment when curiosity turns into suspicion, and suspicion turns into entitlement wrapped in concern. One afternoon, as she cleaned near the pool, a college-age boy from down the street leaned over the fence. "Nice pool," he said. Too casual, too comfortable. She didn't answer. He grinned. "You don't mind if we swim sometimes, right? No one ever uses it." Not a question, a suggestion. Not a request, a warning. That was the moment Nia realized she was dealing with a neighborhood that didn't just dislike her presence, it believed it superseded her ownership. Nothing big had happened yet, no confrontation, no shouting. But the signs were piling up, signs that told her she wasn't being paranoid, wasn't overreacting, wasn't imagining things. The stares, the assumptions, the exclusion, the footprints, the entitled comments. They weren't isolated incidents, they were the foundation. And the worst part? She still had no idea what they were planning, or how far they were willing to go. Because the day she wasn't home, the day they thought they could use her property without getting caught, that was the day Maple Ridge showed its true face. The first time it happened, Nia tried to rationalize it. Teenagers cutting across her yard. Annoying, disrespectful, but not catastrophic. She assumed they'd grow out of it. She assumed it was a one-time thing, but entitlement doesn't shrink. It grows, it tests boundaries until it finds one that doesn't push back. And Maple Ridge had already decided that she wasn't allowed to push back. One Thursday afternoon, Nia came home from the clinic to find two teenage boys jogging through her backyard like it was a public park. They didn't look startled, didn't apologize, didn't even speed up. One of them actually nodded at her, like she was the one intruding on their route. That night, she checked her security footage. They hadn't cut through once. They'd been doing it for days. What struck her wasn't the trespassing. It was the confidence, the comfort, the way they didn't even consider getting caught to be a possibility. It was the same confidence people have when they believe the world belongs to them by default. The next escalation came disguised as clutter. Nia stepped outside one Saturday morning and found a pair of cheap sunglasses floating in the pool. Then a red plastic cup. Then a phone charger lying near the chair, the kind you'd bring for a long afternoon in the sun. She picked up each item carefully, like handling evidence, because that's what it was. Evidence that someone wasn't just cutting across her property, someone was relaxing on it. Then she saw the Bluetooth speaker sitting on her table, connected to her Wi-Fi, playing a playlist she didn't recognize. That's when her stomach dropped. This wasn't trespassing. This was leisure, comfort, recreation. People don't make themselves at home in places they're scared to be. They only do it where they believe they belong. 3 days later, Nia left work early, something she rarely did. She turned onto her street, exhausted, ready for an evening swim, then froze. From a distance, she could see splashes over her fence. Laughter, shadows moving. Her heart started pounding in a way she didn't expect. Not fear, not anger. A cold recognition. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. She parked her car quietly, walked up the side path, and when she opened the gate, it felt like a scene out of a bad sitcom. 7 white teenagers, 2 20-somethings, music blasting, pizza boxes, drinks. One boy was doing a cannonball into her deep end while another filmed him on Snapchat. The moment they saw her, the water went still, not in shame but in irritation, like she'd interrupted their fun. A blonde girl on an inflatable chair rolled her eyes. "Oh my God," she groaned. "We didn't think you were coming back yet. Not sorry. Not we shouldn't be here. Not even curiosity about whether she was upset. Just annoyance at her for existing." Nia kept her voice level. "You need to leave." One boy muttered, "It's just a pool." Another added, "Relax, lady. Lady, not doctor, not homeowner, not even acknowledgement. Lady." That's how entitlement talks, when it believes you don't have authority. Because in their world, your presence is inconvenience, not ownership. Before we go deeper, because this next part reveals how far the parents themselves went. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button. These are real stories, real patterns, real experiences we don't sugarcoat on this channel. Let's keep going. That night, Nia did the logical thing. She visited the parents of 2 of the kids she recognized. She expected at least a hint of accountability. Instead, she got the Maple Ridge special. A mother opened the door with a bright smile until she realized who Nia was. The smile fell instantly. Is everything okay?" Nia explained what happened. The mom chuckled. "Oh, kids will be kids. They weren't hurting anything. It's just water. Just water. Just a pool. Just your property. Just your space, just your right to boundaries. When black people say microaggressions, this is what we mean. The way people minimize your discomfort while maximizing their convenience. Then came the dagger. Well, maybe if you were using it more often. Translation: if the black woman isn't visibly occupying her space 24/7, the white kids are free to claim it. Word spread, not because Naya complained loudly, but because the teenagers did. Suddenly she was dramatic for enforcing her own property line. Uptight, strict, difficult. One father approached her on his morning jog and said, "You know, if you don't want kids in your yard, you could put up a sign." The yard was fenced, locked, private. He didn't care. Because when you're black in white suburbia, people expect you to earn their respect before they acknowledge your rights. Naya didn't jump to confrontation. She did what responsible adults do. She set up cameras, upgraded her locks, politely informed neighbors that her property was off limits. But every step she took was twisted into something ugly. One woman whispered, "She's putting cameras everywhere. It's giving paranoid." Another told someone at the HOA, "She's creating tension in the neighborhood." Tension. Because she wanted privacy, because she wanted safety, because she wanted the same peace they took for granted. What they were really saying was, she doesn't know her place. One night, sitting by her pool alone, Nia understood something that black women learn at different stages of life. You can be polite, professional, patient, reasonable, and none of it matters if people have already decided you don't deserve boundaries. Her home wasn't being violated by accident. Her fence wasn't being jumped because of poor judgment. Her pool wasn't being invaded because the kids were bored. This was entitlement, cultural, generational. Deep-rooted entitlement that saw her as someone whose property existed for their enjoyment. And that's when she made a decision. If they were going to treat her home like a playground, she was going to remind them who built the playground and who owned it. Because the next time they climbed over her fence, they walked straight into a plan they never saw coming, and the whole neighborhood was about to feel it. The plan wasn't born out of revenge. It was born out of something black women know too well. When you're being ignored, dismissed, or minimized, the only language some people understand is evidence. Not emotion, not explanation. Evidence. And after weeks of disrespect, gaslighting, and bold-faced entitlement, Dr. Nia Carter was done giving explanations. She was ready to give evidence. She spent one quiet Thursday evening turning her backyard from a vulnerable space into a fortified one. Not with violence. Not with confrontation, with structure, documentation, protection. She installed 2 additional 4K motion-triggered cameras, angled perfectly to capture the fence, the pool, and the patio. She replaced her lock with a commercial-grade latch that clicked shut with a certainty she had been craving for weeks. Then came the sign. Not the sarcastic kind neighbors hang for decoration. This one was legal, formally worded, laminated, and positioned at eye level. Private property. Trespassing will be recorded and prosecuted. It wasn't a threat. It was a boundary, one that her neighbors would have respected immediately if she weren't the one setting it. But the sign wasn't for them. It was for the moment they chose not to respect it. Naya also did something most people never think to do. She gave the HOA a heads-up, sent a quick email to the city's non-emergency police line, documented everything, because she already knew how these stories go when they reach the wrong hands. Suddenly the black homeowner becomes aggressive, the trespassers become confused kids, and the entire violation gets painted as a misunderstanding. She wasn't leaving room for misunderstandings. The last piece of her plan was subtle. She adjusted her porch light to automatically turn on when anyone stepped onto the deck, a spotlight that captured faces with crisp clarity. When she finished, she took one long breath, not of fear, not of anticipation, of certainty, because she knew they were coming back. Entitlement has a pattern, and Maple Ridge followed it religiously. It was late afternoon 2 days later, warm, bright, quiet. The type of day entitled people assume belongs to them by default. A soft clank echoed from the side of the house. Then the unmistakable creak of the fence, the one they'd climbed so many times their shoes had scuffed the paint. Naya didn't run outside. She didn't interrupt. She didn't even stand up. She simply tapped her phone screen and watched the live footage. 2 teenage boys, a college-age girl, 3 adults, yes, adults, following behind them with pool noodles and a cooler. The audacity was generational, almost artistic. They didn't creep, they strutted. One man pointed at the sign and shrugged. Another waved a dismissive hand like the words private property were optional suggestions. The cameras recorded everything. The porch light clicked on, and Nia quietly hit save. Within minutes, they were splashing, laughing, drinking, and spreading out like the yard belonged to their grandparents. Then one of the adults, not a child, an adult, walked over to her patio table and opened her umbrella for shade. That was the moment that sealed it. The proof wasn't just about teenagers behaving badly. It was about adults modeling entitlement for their children, like it was a life skill. Nia didn't confront them. She didn't give them the performance they probably expected. She let them enjoy themselves. Because you can't argue with footage. You can only watch it. Before we get to what happened when the footage went public, if you're still locked in, hit that subscribe button. These untold black struggle stories, they're real, they're raw, and we don't water anything down here. All right, let's finish this. That evening, once her trespassers left dripping wet and blissfully unaware, Nia uploaded the footage to a private drive and sent one email. Just one. To the HOA board, CC'd to the city liaison, who had already logged her previous complaint. Subject line, documented trespassing, formal filing attached. Within 24 hours, the group chat Maple Ridge used for community updates turned into a public meltdown. Screenshots of the footage circulated faster than apologies. People zoomed in, replayed, analysed. The same neighbours who brushed her off suddenly became experts in fence law, liability, and personal property. One mother wrote, "This must be edited." Another said, "Our kids thought she said it was okay." The video literally showed adults leading them in. No editing, no confusion, no permission, just evidence. The part that rattled them wasn't the trespassing itself. It was the embarrassment. The realization that the one homeowner they had dismissed, minimized, and patronized was the same one holding the receipts. The black woman they treated like a visitor in her own space was the only one acting like an actual adult. Apologies started rolling in. Long, rambling, PR-scripted messages about miscommunication and community unity. Not one of them apologized for the entitlement. Not one acknowledged that they felt comfortable violating her boundaries because they didn't believe she had the power to enforce them. All they cared about was their image. On Saturday morning, Nia stepped outside with a mug of tea. The street was tense, quiet, unusually still. People avoided eye contact. Joggers crossed to the other side. A father who had once lectured her about kids being kids hurried his son into the car like she was the threat. All Nia did was sip her tea and enjoy the silence. Because this time, the silence wasn't dismissive. It was respectful, fearful, accountable. She didn't send follow-up emails, didn't demand apologies, didn't escalate anything. The footage did all the speaking. That week, the HOA quietly instituted new rules about property access, outdoor conduct, and parental supervision. Rules that mysteriously reflected every concern she had raised. Neighbours who once treated her like an intruder now treated her like someone who kept the entire community from collapsing into chaos. But the win wasn't the new rules. It wasn't the forced respect. It wasn't even the embarrassment they suffered. The real victory was simple. They tried to make her small. They tried to make her invisible. They tried to make her doubt her right to peace. And instead they exposed their own entitlement, publicly, permanently, undeniably. Dr. Nia Carter didn't have to shout. She didn't have to argue. She didn't have to prove her worth. She simply protected her home and walked away with her peace, her dignity, and her power untouched.